We need Bible verses for tough times we can cling to if we want to see adversity the way God does. We've compiled 10 biblical examples of people who trusted God during hardship to encourage you. Deborah, relying on God in facing life's challenges. There are many different types of difficulty. The busy chaos of managing life can sometimes be more complicated than a severe tragedy. We risk becoming exhausted, disappointed, and never feeling like we've completed anything because of everything we want to accomplish each week and each day. The list of things to do feels endless. Deborah was one of those incredibly gifted individuals who seemed capable of doing everything. She served as a judge, a prophetess, a leader, a mother, and a wife. And she bravely led people into combat alongside that. Her life is so motivating. How did she manage it all? Deborah had faith in God under difficulties. We put in long hours at tough jobs every day and try our best to provide for our families. While we may not hold the same position as Deborah, life nevertheless expects a lot of us, resolving conflicts and supporting others with their marriages, finances, children, and health. Like many of our families, Deborah's family, the people of Israel, had its share of problems. Hers was simply larger. She can serve as an inspiration for how to deal with the chaos in our daily life. Then Deborah said to Barak, "Go, this is the day the Lord has given Sisera into your hands. Has not the Lord gone ahead of you?" So Barak went down Mount Tabor with 10,000 men following him. At Barak's advance, the Lord routed Sisera and all his chariots and army by the sword. Sisera got down from his chariot and fled on foot. Judges chapter 4 verses 14 to 15. Deborah had faith and trust in God, which can be difficult for us. In her life, God was actual and present. She thought that thanks to God, she already had the win. Judges chapter 5 verse 7 says, "There were no warriors in Israel until I, Deborah, arose to be a mother to Israel." Deborah called herself Israel's mother. Deborah treated the individuals she led with the same level of concern as a mother has for her children. Despite the demands, she was driven to serve because she cared about the people. So when we feel overburdened or exhausted and want to give up, we find that keeping in mind the people we care about, friends, family, and our neighborhood, allows us to persevere. Deborah was a prime illustration of this. Due to her role as their mother, she was able to continue. Zechariah and Elizabeth. Trusting God when a longing is unfulfilled. Unsatisfied longing can be demoralizing. Imagine being in a culture where the number of children you have determines how much God loves you, especially after being married for a very long time and being unable to conceive. This is the tale of Zechariah and Elizabeth, a very old and childless couple. They serve as an illustration of someone who knew the agony of having your wishes unmet and not being able to understand why. Have you recently been turned down for anything you yearn for? It can be a persistent health issue that won't go away, a rebellious child, a character flaw you can't get over, or a sin that ruins your relationships in your life. Elizabeth and Zechariah understand. They also understand how to remain faithful while waiting on God. Zechariah and Elizabeth's capacity for faith in the face of unrequited longing makes them admirable. They keep up their devotion to God, and God acknowledged their righteousness, so we know they trusted Him. While Zechariah was serving God as a priest, an angel appeared to him bearing joyful news. He had the option of giving up on God, but he chose to continue serving God despite his unmet desire. Now, how do you respond to hardship? It can be simple to lose faith and swiftly veer towards self-pity and skepticism if, like me, you experience adversity for any period of time. We stop praying and waiting for God to act. As a result of this, Elizabeth and Zechariah's narrative teaches us about God's promise and what it means to live by faith. God worked to bless Zechariah and Elizabeth's lives even after they had to wait a very long time. demonstrating his devotion to them. Second, Zechariah and Elizabeth believed God loved them and desired to bless them. Therefore, they lived by faith. They desired to maintain their righteousness while they awaited the fulfillment of their desires. When we reflect on God's constancy and decide to live by faith, we can have hope during waiting times. Isaiah, relying on God in the face of bad news. God picked Isaiah to convey a crucial message to the Israelites. God prepared his people for an amazing future filled with salvation and hope. Before all of it, God showed Isaiah a powerful vision that ultimately overcame him. This was a critical time for Isaiah to put his faith in the Lord's plan and reliability. Isaiah 21 verse 3, "My stomach sinks, my gut churns with pain. As a woman in labor wrenches and writhes, I can hardly bear the news. I cannot hear because I'm bent over in agony, and I cannot see because I'm deep in the fog of depression." The fear of receiving bad news is among our significant phobias. When we receive terrible news, we typically begin to imagine the worst-case scenario. We are instantly overcome with waves of dread and a sense of helplessness. Praying during these times might be very challenging. Making a plan or coming up with a solution gives my flesh relief. Still, adversity provides us with a chance to improve our prayer practice. Because Isaiah was open about his doubts and frustrations and strongly believed in God's plan, his faith endured despite unpleasant news. The fact that Isaiah was open about his doubts and frustrations and had a strong feeling in God's plan contributed to the fact that his faith persevered in the face of unpleasant news. Our open prayers with God help us to reach new heights of connection. Woman healed by Jesus. Trusting God is taking risks despite the pain. We have seen a scene in Mark 5 frequently appearing in the Gospels. Jesus is surrounded by a sizable crowd. People flocked to him and pressed against him from all over the area. A woman who had endured recurrent bleeding for 12 years was among the crowd. She had sought the care of numerous doctors and spent all her money on it. But instead of getting better, her situation got worse. According to the customs and norms of the time, she was regarded as filthy due to the nature of her disease. She was despised, poor, and ill. However, she could temporarily overlook the anguish and finally take the risk that altered everything because of her strong faith in Jesus. When dealing with long-standing issues or a chronic health condition, trying something new may be the last thing in your thoughts. Even though the woman remained anonymous, her inspirational tale of perseverance has stayed. She bravely ventured to trust in Jesus and his power. Moses, relying on God even when there is no escape. We can experience periods of difficulty where we feel we have no options left to find a way out or a solution to conquer the situation. We find ourselves asking, how did I get myself here? Like being in the hospital with a back injury, in excruciating pain and unable to move. The question comes, what brought me here? When Moses led Israel out of Egypt, when they were trapped between the Red Sea and an enraged Egyptian army, he felt the same way. This interaction between God, Moses, and the Israelites is expertly dissected in Robert Morgan's book, The Red Sea Rules. The same God who led you in will lead you out. The Israelites were led by God precisely to the Red Sea's margin, and that was where he wanted them to be. Only God could make a way for them because the Egyptians and Pharaoh were closing in, and the river was at their backs. Sometimes in our life, we may have this experience. We believe that we are in an impossible circumstance so that God can demonstrate his strength to us. God thinks creatively and unconventionally. Everyone felt that they had no way out, since no one could have foreseen that he would separate the Red Sea so that the Israelites might cross on dry land. All of us will experience challenging times. Even while it is simple to become anxious about having nowhere to turn to, these are the times that we may most clearly see God at work.